That's the thing, you know, it's like, some people have this idea, and I'm just saying this to lighten it up, because we're going to get heavy very soon, but, you know, people have this thought, because, you know, in the Four Noble Truths is like truth of suffering, and then we talk about suffering, it's like 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering, you know. So one time there was a Hindu guru who met one of my teachers, and then he said, this Hindu guru said, yeah, you know, we, you Buddhists, you always are talking about dukkha. We always talk about sukha. You get it? So, anyone need a translation? You guys are all Sanskrit experts. Even just 2 words, you okay? Huh? But the point is, you know, why we have to consider the suffering nature, right? And then some people say, oh yeah, Buddha is such a pessimist. You know, so like, you know, what we say in the States, yeah. Buddha is like killing my buzz. You guys have that? Killing my buzz. You know? Sorry, anyway. What that means is like if you're out at a party, you know, and you want to have a good time, right? Then someone tells you like some kind of like not nice story. It's like, oh man, you've killed my buzz. Anyway. So people think that of Buddha. But the point is, you know, in the Four Noble Truths, we have the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering, okay? So, I would agree with you, if Buddha just stopped there, it would be pretty pessimistic, you know? We suffer, and our suffering has a cause, you know? Okay. But he didn't stop there, right? Went on to say, there's a cessation of the suffering, meaning there's a way to permanently rid yourself of all these problems forever. Ultimate healing, right? And there's a path that leads to that. There's methods that you can do it, right? So it would be one thing if you know, all we had was suffering and there was no alternative. If that were the case, then yeah, I mean, maybe don't tell me. Like, let me enjoy my, you know, sunset on the beach in Goa and, you know, pina colada or whatever, right? Right? But since there is an alternative, right? And not only is there the alternative exists, but there's a way to achieve it. It's not just like, you know, okay, liberation is available to 5 of you, and you know the Buddha like hands out 5 tokens, you know, and then you get entry into the land of liberation. But it's open to all of us. So then, so much hope, you know, it's unbelievable. So it's very optimistic actually. But what like what Drukpa Kunle said, the difference why we're still in samsara is we've been so fixated on these small samsaric happiness. Like there's a statement in the Vinaya Sutra, Vinaya being the monastic discipline sutra, where it says, you know, we give up we give up the great happiness to achieve the small happiness. But we should give up the small happiness to achieve the great happiness, right? So our preoccupation with the small happiness of samsara, sunsets on the beach and pina coladas, that means, okay, nothing's wrong with that, right? But in and of itself, you know? But compared to the liberation of, the bliss of liberation and enlightenment, there's no question, right? So those experiences, okay, sunset on the beach, it's okay, but the thing is, it's never enough, you know? How many sunsets have we seen? Okay, sorry, I'm from Hawaii, you know. Probably here in Delhi, you don't see very many. But anyway, how many pleasant experiences have we had, you know? And did we find the happiness that we thought it was going to bring? No. So that's why Buddha says, okay, actually when we say suffering, dukkha, it's not just suffering like, very gross, like physical pain or being in poverty and something like this. But I actually think that the translation, dukkha being unsatisfactory, is better, because it incorporates like so much more. Even the fact that, when we have a beautiful coffee, I brought this up from South India. Anyway, then the fact that there is some pleasure, but no, I want some more. Even just this, or I had a coffee this morning when I woke up. Then at 11 o'clock, okay, what do you want to drink? I want another coffee. Like this thing, no satisfaction. Yeah, that is dukkha too. Okay. That's dukkha. So that's why Aryadeva says in the 400 stanzas that for the rich, the dukkha, for the poor, the dukkha is mostly physical. For the rich, the dukkha is mostly mental. But every day, these two kinds of people are destroyed by these two kinds of dukkha. Yeah. In Tibetan, dumel. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. So, as I mentioned this morning, right at the beginning, I wanted to talk about breaking through some of our fixed concepts. Yeah. Because our suffering that we experience in the world is ultimately due to incorrect and distorted views of viewing reality. Okay? So, as some of you might know, there's like the so-called 4 distortions. Yeah? The 4 distortions. So, in any case, we view the things that are actually impermanent in nature to be permanent. We view the things that are actually unclean in nature to be clean and pure. We view the things that are actually suffering in nature to be happiness. And we view the things that are actually selfless in nature as having or possessing a self. Okay? Okay? So by the way, yes, yeah. Have you studied much Buddhism before? No. No, first time. Okay. Oh, you've been to Maklaganj and?
I just attended a city. It was going on, something was going on, and I just...
Who's the teacher?
I don't know.
Okay. Not the Dalai Lama though?
No.
Okay. Okay. I have to, why I ask is because, I'm getting into a little bit more stuff here and I don't want blank faces. Okay? So, in any case, so there are these 4 distortions we have, right? So, I wanted to talk about, in particular, the first one, viewing impermanent phenomena as being permanent. Okay? So actually, I was a little bit less than honest with you at the beginning, saying that when I put the title as Ultimate Healing, I didn't know what I was going to say. I kind of use humor as like a little bit of a tactic to diffuse situations where I feel uncomfortable. Okay. So anyway, I did have this syllabus in mind, and this syllabus is similar to what my own teacher Lama Zopa Rinpoche has done for people that have been diagnosed with a terminal illness, so-called terminal illness, cancer, HIV, AIDS, stuff like this, right? None of us are, well, if the worst of our problems are migraine headaches, I think we're okay. But actually, that's not the worst of our problem. We all have a terminal disease, yeah? which is called having been born in samsara. Okay. Right? But there is a cure for that. But anyway, since this was this syllabus is intended for people with terminal illness, it was to also help them break through some fixed concepts they had about illness and death and so forth. Right now, I mean, we think we're okay, but we never know, right? We never know next time we go to the doctor what kind of results will come back, you know? So anyway, I do think it's useful to talk about these things, because anyway they'll help us, because we have the chronic disease of having been born in samsara, right? Okay. So, one thing that we all have, this concept of viewing things that are actually impermanent as being permanent, is like this, right? We all might know on an intellectual level that we're going to die, right? But if we if we were asked, yeah, are you going to die today? And no, right? No. So, here, to put it in another way, right? It's like, we think we're, you know, in a good health. We might think we're reasonably young. No problem. Then it's like, okay, death is coming a long time in the future. Okay. And on a flip side, then like these people, they might get diagnosed with, okay, now you have cancer or something. Then it's like this big fear of death comes up right away, right? But one thing to keep in mind is, well, death can come at any time for any of us, you know? And so of all the cancer patients and people with HIV and all these kinds of things, right? So many more people are going to die today that were in perfect good health, you know? Right? So you can even imagine like a situation where, you know, someone has cancer, then they're on the way to the hospital for like chemotherapy, and they die in a car accident on the way there, you know? So, and even if we look in the room, right, if we were to line all of us up according to our age, right, and then we were to, you know, fast forward 100 years and then check the order of our respective deaths, you know, it definitely would be different from the order of our age right now. Definitely. Okay. Sorry. No more joking. So, as I said earlier, right, this thought of our impeding death is the real one that gives us a lot of energy to our practice, yeah? So I actually wanted us to think about this and go into the kind of traditional, what's called the 9 death point meditation, yeah? 9-point death meditation. I said 9 death point meditation. 9-point death meditation, okay? Okay? So, I'm just gonna talk about it a little bit and then let's meditate. Remember? Workshop. Okay? So as I mentioned before, that of all the different kinds of meditation, they can be categorized into 2. Analytic meditation and placement meditation. So this is actually an analytic meditation. Okay? So we have a mere intellectual understanding of our own death, but when we meditate and reflect and think about it, and let that kind of sink into our mind, it can have a very transformative and liberating effect, and actually help us to live our lives more fully. You know, this is why, for me, I had this kind of warped thought that I wish my guru told me I have a terminal illness. Anyway, okay? So anyway, this is an analytic meditation, and there are, they're called 3 roots, 3 root points, and then each of those 3 root points has 3 further contemplations within it. Okay? So here we're going to be using our analytic capacity, our intelligence, to think about a certain, think about these points, and then we're going to be arriving at certain conclusions, and then letting those conclusions kind of sink into our mind. Yeah? So they become stable. Okay. So the 3 roots are the inevitability of death. Yeah? Inevitability of death, or certainty of death. Then the next is that the time of death is uncertain. And the third is, at the time of death, the only thing that will matter is our level of realization or our Dharma practice. Okay? So those are the 3 roots. Now, within the first one, the inevitability of death, there's 3 further points to think of. That everyone must die, right? So here we think about everyone in history. You know, you look on the walls, these like great masters in the past. Everyone, you know, throughout history, all the great kings. You know, even Buddha himself has died. And everyone will die. All of it. And then to make it, you know, real for us, then we should think about the people in our lives that, you know, our grandparents, or maybe even our parents, maybe even our siblings, yeah, that we know who have died. And then we come to the conclusion, after thinking about this, yes, everyone must die. Okay? And then, not only that, but the second point is our lifespan is constantly decreasing. Okay? So just like in a, you know, an hourglass with the sand constantly flowing out, our lifespan is like that, you know. And there's no time where we can push the pause button or something, you know. Today is every day we're getting closer to the time of death. And even if we take care of ourselves and, you know, cut out trans fats and do exercise and so forth, still, even after we go for the morning jog, at the end of that morning jog, we're still closer to our death than we were before. Sorry. But don't cancel your gym memberships. Okay?
Or do the preparation for the death.
Yeah. Then third is that even when we are still alive, the time we have for Dharma practice is very small. Okay? So just think about maybe a third of our life we sleep. Yeah? Then, you know, we have to eat, you know, 3 meals a day, half an hour to an hour each meal. We have to go to work, most of us, right? We have to sit in traffic. right? All these things take up so much time, right? So how much time do we have left over for Dharma practice? Yeah. Or you can think from a bottom-up perspective, how much time do we actually practice? 1 hour a day, right? If we really checked our lives, right, probably most of us, we spend more time in the bathroom than we do practicing Dharma. Yeah? Really? Anyway, I have a, okay, since we're getting a bit heavy, I have one, just comic relief. I have a story. I'll just keep it brief. But you know, there's someone in Bangalore I work with who's, anyway, involved in the center there, and we have to work together to put the schedule up and all these kinds of things. So I call her once, because we have to send an email out, and she says to me, oh yeah, well, yeah, I was about to step in the shower. Yeah, I'll call you afterwards. Okay? So she calls me over an hour later. You know? I was like, I thought you were gonna call me right after you got out of the shower. She's like, yeah, I did. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, oh, well, you know. Okay. So this person, she uses, well, 2 kinds of soap. Okay. First, it's a rough kind of soap that it exfoliates, yeah. And then another kind of soap that like moisturizes. Okay. All right. Then she also, you know, puts in the shampoo, lets it soak in the hair for however many minutes, right? And she has long hair. Then rinsing that off, and then putting in the conditioner. Okay? Letting that sink in, okay. But the kicker is, she then doesn't use a towel, but just air dries. Okay? So I'm like, so you took 70 minutes for the shower, for all that, right? And she's the same person who says to me like, oh yeah, no, Namjong, I don't have time to practice. You know, sometimes I'm just doing my daily prayers like in the taxi on the way to work, you know? So I told her, I said, if you have time enough to take a 70-minute shower every day, you have time to meditate, isn't it?
Wait.
Yeah, you and me, all right. Okay, so anyway, the time we have for practice is very small, even while we're alive. And then to think about it another way, right? Another way to think about it is, you know, in the early part of our lives, we have no interest in this kind of stuff, right? So actually, there's a Tibetan master, I think Guntang Rinpoche, I think so, who once was asked by his students to give a short description of his biography, and you know, his students asked him many times, and out of humility, he's like, no, there's nothing special about my life, no. But then finally he capitulated and said, okay, here's my biography. For the first 20 years of my life, I had no interest in practicing Dharma. For the next 20 years of my life, I said, I will practice Dharma later. And for the last 20 years of my life, I said, I wish I had practiced Dharma earlier.
Finished.
Bas, yeah. Right? It was kind of like that for us, too, you know? So anyway, the time we have for practicing is very less. Okay, next is the uncertainty of the time of death. Okay? So here, there's again 3 points to think about. The first is that the lifespan of human beings is uncertain, not fixed. Okay? The young die before the old many times. Many times the parents will bury their own children, you know? my own grandmother, she, you know, went to the funeral of 2 of her children, you know, and we see that a lot, right? The sick can actually live longer than people who are healthy, right? And in any case, you know, probably these days, life expectancy has gone up a lot, but still, maybe, what's the Guinness Book of World Records, like 120 something?
127.
127, okay? But there's people who die even in the womb. So anything between like 0 and 127, we don't know. So the next point is that there are many causes for death, but very few that sustain life. So disease, you know, war, car accidents, all these kinds of things can contribute to death. And so here, as a way to help my practice, you know, and maybe some of you guys can do too, you can like Google strange ways that people die, you know? And there's some really funky ones. There was one time, this person, I mean it's sad, but this person, he as a job, he sold this kind of like bulletproof glass, you know, like unbreakable glass. And he was a salesman. And then in his office there was like the window, the whole wall was this glass. And then when the people came in, you know, as a sales technique, he would like run himself and like bang himself into the thing to show like, look, this doesn't break, okay? But one time, the glass didn't break, but the seal around the side of the glass came loose, and he went over with a whole piece of unbroken glass and fell, you know, 13 stories to his death.